Hello everybody, welcome to today's show. My name is Spencer Walsh. Thank you so much for joining us here today. We have a good one for you. We're going to bring you some of the latest in terms of updates in Afghanistan. U.S. has been turning away some Afghan allies from the Kabul airport, an official has said. The Pentagon has had to deploy helicopters and special forces in Kabul for evacuations, and the violence at Kabul's airport fuels calls to prolong some of the U.S. withdrawal. And boy, would they like that so bad. It's going to be interesting to see what the Biden administration does here, as we're kind of reaching a little bit of a choke point and a decision point for him. We'll get into that. But a lot of the stuff that you're seeing on cable news, that is funded by a lot of the defense industry. Like, this is a defense industry product. We're going to take a look at the video from The Intercept that pretty much breaks all of that stuff down. Meanwhile, the Biden job approval is on the downhill, but the good thing is the support for the withdrawal of Afghan troops remains after an unprecedented media onslaught against the decision. Also, an update on the Democrats' budget efforts, and another reason why you should never trust vaccine consultants or private consultants of any kind, is because just now it's come out that they have really fudged the vaccine withdrawal. Not a good look. Not a good just period for consultants like it ever is. Anyway, this is Newsflash. Let's get started. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get right into it today. And we start with this in the New York Times. Some Afghan military interpreters and other close U.S. allies, a stated priority group for evacuation from Afghanistan, are being turned away from Kabul in the airport by American officials in order to give priority to U.S. citizens and green card holders, a State Department official said on Monday. So it looks like they are really struggling because, of course, what pretty much what happens right now is the Taliban has every single area except the airport. The U.S. has asserted control of the airport, and pretty much what their goal is, the Taliban are just giving them an August 31st deadline. This is their agreement, the August 31st deadline, and they're only letting so many people in at a time to get them out of Afghanistan, of course, through the airport. Which is pretty much the only thing in the country the U.S. still controls. So the details given on the condition of anonymity, because the official was not authorized to brief the news media, were supported by interviews with Afghans who have approached the airport in recent days, and with American veterans groups and other organizations who have tried to organize departures for Afghans who are at risk of retribution from the Taliban because they worked with the U.S. government. So a lot of times the Americans are, especially all like Americans, green card holders, they're finding that they have a relatively easy way out. I mean, not, relatively is the word doing a lot of heavy lifting there, but the people who are, of Afghan descent are having a lot more trouble, which, I mean, it speaks to what we did here in this war. Like, we have seen, like, the legacy of this war has just been nothing but failure, and really, just, it's the same as always in terms of who comes up a loser at any time the U.S. goes to another country, which is the people of that country. Not to mention, the massive lives and resources lost and wasted in Afghanistan. Just financially with humans, it's just been a complete and utter failure. But that also doesn't take into account the fact that it's been hell for, I mean, largely in part of the U.S. being responsible for this, like 40 years of hell and just complete and constant work. Because things have not been good. It didn't start with just the United States invading in 2001. Things have not been good for the people of Afghanistan for a long, long time. But it really shows you this is just another legacy of, I think, not really the decision withdrawal, because I think Biden is absolutely right, and I think a lot of Americans are going to end up agreeing with him, even if this decision permeates more than 2 weeks in their lives. Although it does seem like it's staying around because we have done many shows on it. It's sticking in the news cycle for sure, but I think it's really just been fascinating to see some of this coverage, just the intensity of what we've been seeing for the past two or so weeks. But has it been too? I don't even know. I'm losing track at this point. But all I do know is it has been very interesting to see just the real freak out and the genuine understanding. Like, this is an end of an era. Like this is the end of the 9/11 era. This is the end of the, we can do whatever we want because we are at war with terror. Like that excuse, it hasn't been working for a bit of time right now. It's probably it's been on the decline for 4 or 5 years now. But now this is really when the chickens are coming home to roost. When we have a U.S. president willing to come out there and say with again unified opposition with all the media, and we're going to get into that and just still hold strong. It is really, frankly, incredible to see. It's incredible to see. The pace of the evacuations has accelerated, and it's not clear what proportion of eligible Afghans, people who have secured special immigrant visas or to settle in the United States, are now being turned away, or how long that will last. So obviously, the Taliban wanting to just kind of set in a little bit more of an example. If they can get anyone, and face little to no retribution for it, it's going to be the Afghans here, and the people, especially the Afghans who worked with America. And I mean, I don't know how serious the Taliban are about their, PR push, going for. I think they really are going for Western recognition because that's something that they didn't have last time, and that did hurt them. Or just international recognition that doesn't necessarily have to come from the West. But yeah, I think the Taliban, they're serious about getting it at this point, but it still is a very, very risky situation for the United States to see their allies kind of being under knife's edge like this. And again, this is not a consequence of the decision to pull out because it would have happened at any time. This is what happens when you lose a war. Things can get a little awkward. Things can, you can take some serious and severe casualties, especially when you want to pull out. I think the best analogy on this is, I mean, this Afghan war was a sword in the side of this country, a knife in the side. You're going to have to pull the knife out at some point if you ever want any shot, any hope at healing the wound. Like, you got to pull it out at some point. Like, there may be a little bit of blood, there may be a little bit extra bleeding. It may aggravate it for the time being, but eventually that wound will, close up, or at least begin to close up. It definitely will not do anything if you keep it exactly the way it is. All right, I want to get into this now. We are going to move on to our next story, and that is in The Intercept. So we're going to listen to this now. This is a Intercept video about how Taliban fighters are making sweeping gains across the country. The media's military experts criticizing Afghanistan's withdrawal are on the defense industry dole. This is from Travis Mannon in The Intercept. I want to go into this.
Gains across the country.
This is a news clip.
Its final withdrawal from Afghanistan today.
Taliban fighters make sweeping gains across the country.
The Taliban have taken Afghanistan.
It's a sad, frustrating moment.
And you love to see, all the people, just it doesn't really even have that much to do with, coverage of the war in general, but it is always hilarious to see, especially, kind of mainstream reporters tripping over themselves to pronounce Middle Eastern or ethnic names in the most, over-the-top ways possible. Just be like, the Taliban have pulled out of Afghanistan. Like, some ridiculous thing like that. I know this is when there was when Jamal Khashoggi died. Like, you do not know how to say that name properly. It just sounds incredibly weird and almost like patronizing coming off of you. So it just comes up. So the media, the headline here is the media invited a parade of ex-military and public officials to castigate Biden for his withdrawal from Afghanistan. This is what the text on the screen says.
An ill-conceived, and I emphasize ill-conceived,
General Jack Keane, Dave Petraeus, Leon Panetta, all in the media. Many of those pundits have undisclosed ties to the defense industry, which has seen extraordinary profits from the 20-year occupation.
This might be termed, I think, a Dunkirk moment.
This is Dave Petraeus,
retreat.
I really
Jack
don't
Keane,
understand
Richard
the
Haas,
logic
big intelligence industry like Nate or General
Jack
Spook.
Keane, retired four-star U.S. Army general, Fox News senior strategic analyst, and chair of the Institute for the Study of War.
Oh, wow. The study of war. So, yeah, that's Jack Keane. He's the executive chair of AM General, the company that makes Humvees. I wonder how many IEDs blew up those Humvees that Jack Keane made, and how many more he wants to keep making. Because if they keep getting blown up, it means we've got to make more. Next model coming next year is going to be even better. That is the mentality these people had, and that's why they were willing to let this war keep going forever. And if anyone tried to stop it, they would just freak out. This is how they are. This is who they are, and this is how they operate. Keane also sits on the board of Siloon Technologies, which manufactures military technology deployed in Afghanistan.
I think the administration made a terrible mistake in pulling our troops out.
Oh, really? Really?
Giving the Taliban the opportunity to take the country over. It's going to become a more dangerous place, threatening America, and the world's a more dangerous place.
Joining me now for more is General David Petraeus, who served as
By the way, this is
commander of U.S.
BBC
forces
World
in
News.
Afghanistan
Petraeus has been a
and was
complete
also the
liberal
director
hero.
of the CIA.
Former director of the CIA. Wow. He's a partner at KKR, a global private equity firm with assets in the defense sector. Real ghoul among ghouls behind some of the biggest foreign policy, quote-unquote, mistakes the U.S. has ever made.
This, again, is
on BBC World News. This is a respectable outlet.
Yeah.
Unless the United States and its allies recognize that we made a serious mistake.
We're happy to have
and go right back to giving me money, just like the good old days. You know, that's how it works. That's how it is.
On foreign relations, and an author
Richard
of several
Haas.
books, his most recent work, The World: A Brief Introduction.
He sits on the board of investment firm Lazard, which actively serves the aerospace's and defense companies' interests.
I think an incorrect policy was selected here by the president, obviously against many.
And I mean, they're literally saying
he was
it.
Receiving from the military and others. Well, by the time Joe Biden became president, I actually think he inherited a situation, Brian, which he could have lived with. We had 2,500 American troops, about 4 times that many Allied troops, and this American presence provided the anchor for not just other foreign troops, but for the Afghans themselves.
And that's what these people. This is very important, because this is what these people, Richard Haas and everything like them. This is what they're building the groundwork for. A forever war. You know, that's the term that a lot of people have been deriding online, journalists being like, we're standing up to people. We're not just talking about the forever war. We're standing up to people. And then, you know, continuing to show for everybody, you know, on the forever war and everything else like that. But one of the things that they do is really say, you know what, we don't want a lot of troops. We don't want aggressive amounts of troops. We just want that low boil, that slow boil that is completely out of coverage, that most Americans don't care about until something dramatic happens, like, you know, Kabul going up in flames. But really, we have just carte blanche to do whatever we want. That is their wet dream fantasy. Like, that is what they want to do. They want to just be able to sit there. They want to be able to do whatever they want. Like, that is the forever war. And it's all about finding that balance, finding that equilibrium, just finding where it's just enough troops so that, you know, can really get the juices flowing. But it's just you know, it's enough, but not too much so that, you know, people will get too freaked out. There's not going to be, you know, enough dead bodies ending up the front pages of the papers and things.
Understand the logic there.
And joining us now is Leon Panetta, the former defense secretary and CIA director, of course, helped oversee the successful hunt for Osama bin Laden.
Yeah, that successful hunt where Barack Obama could have been captured in, I don't know what, October 2001, and was let go. I mean, taking 11 years to find one guy when you're the biggest country in the world, that is not successful. No, when was bin Laden killed? I don't even know. So yeah, Leon Panetta, he is a senior counselor for Beacon Global Strategies, a defense consulting firm. And again, literally, what these people they're being allowed to go on television and advocating for, hey, give me money. That's what they're saying. When we see people like this, people who have some deep ties or history in the defense industry or whatever, coming on TV and saying things like this, they're saying literally, in most cases directly, give me money. The Afghanistan war directly made all of these people money, and they're going on the television screen, talking to millions of people, influencing millions of, like, very influential opinion about what people should be doing. Like, it's very, very frustrating that these people are able to have that much power, and it's clear that they're using it, and they've used it for a very long time. That's a big reason why we're in this situation.
With the Taliban now controlling Afghanistan,
Love the drum of war music they have, though.
That they will provide a safe haven for Al Qaeda.
And that's incredibly deceitful rhetoric, because the United States was given a chance. They were offered to negotiate, to have a deal with the Taliban, but they did not take that deal. Nobody talks about that, last of which, Leon Panetta.
And for ISIS and for other terrorists to be able to reorganize, strengthen themselves again,
it's still going. It always keeps going. Never
use
stops.
Afghanistan as a base for attacking not just the United States, but other countries as well. This is a national security threat.
Oh, dear.
I totally agree with Secretary Panetta. And during his regime, they killed Osama bin Laden, so he's very much involved in what is happening here. He knows the history and the past of it.
And there you see, they're all coming together. They all have these ties. They all are probably friends, and they all know one thing, which is we got to keep this going. We got to keep, when is the next big thing? When are we off for the next, big beating of the drum of, U.S. empire? And we gotta keep ourselves looking good and literally keep money in our pockets. It's as simple, it's as brazen, as complete and corrupt as that. It's just coded in so many nice things, nice suits, fancy sets, and all these great grand notions of honoring America and protecting us against the big and eternal threat of terrorism. But what happens here is literally, functionally, what they're doing is coming onto the television in front of your faces and saying, "Yeah, give me your hard-spent, hard-given-up tax dollars." That's what they're saying. Just as simple as that. Speaking of support and approval, most Americans have wanted to withdraw from Afghanistan for a while, and most still do. But not like this. Public reaction to what's happened there is decidedly negative, with Americans now fearing wider repercussions from a heightened threat of terrorism back home. The public weighs in with rough judgments on President Biden, not only for his handling of it, but with his overall presidential approval rating dropping substantially, and broader views of his qualities like effectiveness and competence taking hits along with it. Looking forward, there's widespread and cross-party agreement on helping those Afghans who help the U.S., including, by the way, it shouldn't just be them. It should be everybody, because not only because that kind of rests off the basic assumption that the United States presence in Afghanistan was in any way a gift or a positive thing, which I would say if you go to most Afghans, the United States involvement in Afghanistan, and by the way, that just didn't start with the 2001 invasion. That started with Jimmy Carter and the freaking Mujahideen. Let's be honest there. Let's take the full picture into account if we're going to look at it in the first place. That has to be taken into account. And also what has to be taken into account is the ridiculous, non-stop, vicious onslaught of negative press. And especially from people, and especially from sources that have just kept Biden afloat through all this time. This guy, he's not a particularly strong politician. I really support the moves that he made on this, but he is not someone, and not really much else. I haven't been a big fan of his presidency up to this point, if you've listened to the show at all. But, this is a guy who, let's face facts here, if this was any kind of normal year 2020 was last year, he would not have won president. If he had to go out there and rally in any kind of consistent schedule, if he didn't have coronavirus going on and Donald Trump mishandling it so badly to run against, this guy would not have been president. He did not survive. He did not get his way through the primaries as well, by the way. And, that's a whole nother big fat can of worms without serious media support. And if he's not getting that media support, it makes sense he's going to take a hit. But looking forward, there is widespread support and for helping these refugees, and on the belief that the United States is not presently doing enough. As we can see, really they are failing on that front. That's undeniable, to help get civilians out of Afghanistan. A critique that also finds agreement with most Democrats and Republicans. Do you approve of removing U.S. troops, though? Still 63% to 40%. Then approve of Biden's handling of the removal. That's still pretty high. 47% approve of Biden's handling of the removal of troops. Really not bad, actually, considering what we've seen in the media and the way this has been framed. Because you can frame it any way. You can frame the way Biden would have you frame it, which I think is perfect. The right framing is what this is. This is a consequence of the fact that we were there in the first place, not the fact that this I took the troops out now. Taking the troops out, waiting a little bit more, I really don't think that would have done anything, because they're only going to gain more power. The United States is not going to be able to do anything to stop them without massive recommitments and breaking agreements and all that stuff that's going to drag us in even more before we go out. And, it's, as I said, it is the sword in the side of America. It has to be taken out for the beginning to heal. But, of course, that may cause a little bit of blood. Yeah, that's the awkward part about it. And even though support for the withdrawal has dipped since the spring, those who disapprove say it's because the situation wasn't handled well, more so than they think the troops now ought to stay, which is really incredible because, again, the media talk about this has been ridiculous from all these people in these fancy suits coming out, really putting pressure on this. Like, the numbers here are, frankly, they're freaking incredible. Like, only 47% of people, that's half the country, approves of what we saw in Biden's handling. Like, I'm sure they don't approve the people falling on planes, but they're willing to say to a pollster, I approve of it when that stuff has gone on. It's pretty incredible. So 47% approved, 60% approved in July, and now 53% of people disapprove of Biden's handling, where 40%, 60-40 in July, now it's 47-53. It's dipped pretty significantly, but still is, I'd say it's a pretty good figure considering for Joe Biden. If he's pulling that right now, that is good. Biden's overall approval rating, which has been consistently net positive, and now lands at an even 50-50 nationwide. He's taken a big hit among independents, given who, the media's conception of what independents truly are. That's not surprising. They gave him positive marks in July, but now more than half of disapprove of how he's been withdrawing from Afghanistan and his job overall. His approval is down within his own Democratic Party. It's still high in the 80s, but off its high in the 90s. And while he enjoyed a bit of Republican approval this summer, that has really dropped. Along with the drop in his approval, there's been a more specific impact on qualities the public sees in Biden. He's been positive on qualities like competence, focus, and effectiveness. Now those are all slightly net negative. He's still positive on handling the coronavirus outbreak, though that is down from last month. We'll see if this is kind of a deep trend or something that will be more kind of temporary as Biden gets some bad press over the troop withdrawal. But it's going to be interesting to see how bad this bad press is. How bad will it last? It's been hanging around for a bit now, but it still doesn't look like it's going to have a dent on public opinion where it actually matters. But if Biden creates political consequence or faces political consequence from this, it's going to really hurt the motive for a lot of people to do it again, I think. So that is another story. We will take a quick break. We're back in a minute.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to our segment to tell you all about what's going on here on the Spencer Walsh Radio Network this summer. We do, as I'm sure you know, have a great lineup available for you. We, of course, start with our flagship show, Newsflash, all new Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Uncultured, irregularly back every Saturday with live music and sports analysis with my co-host for the summer, Bennett Laxton. Hidden History will be brand new every Thursday on a bit of a hiatus, but will return shortly. It's the summer of podcasting. It's the summer of sounds. All you got to do is just keep listening wherever you get your podcasts, always here on the Spencer Walsh Radio Network.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get right to it. We have a very interesting drama taking place at the moment where we're about to get some of the budget wrangling back into it and cover that a lot more here in the future shows. But, yeah, we're following a very interesting situation right now in Washington, also in Napa Valley. This is by Lindsay McPherson in Roll Call. Hours before a procedural vote needed to kick off debate in the fiscal 2022 budget resolution, 9 moderate Democrats were engaged in a standoff with their leadership that could prevent the House from adopting the budget this week. So this is the budget resolution, I believe, in reconciliation. In a Monday letter, colleagues, Speaker Nancy Pelosi wrote that the meeting was intended to chart a path forward on the not-yet-written $3.5 trillion reconciliation package of education, child care, clean energy, and various other items dubbed soft or human infrastructure, as well as $550 billion Senate-passed physical infrastructure, for the physical infrastructure bill that we know. That's the one with Republican support. So I know we will succeed because of the confidence I have in the shared values of all in our caucus for America's working families. The success of each bill contributes to the success of the other. So saying, Pelosi here, that is important. We got to get them working together. This is something that we should have down pretty easily. After that meeting, the chamber is scheduled to vote on a combined rule that would set up the debate on the budget resolution, a voting rights measure, and the infrastructure bill. The latter is not scheduled for final passage this week, and at least 9 moderate Democrats are threatening to vote against it if the budget if the infrastructure bill does not get a vote. So they want to pass the bipartisan bill right away. And those are Josh Gottheimer of New Jersey, Carolyn Bordeaux of Georgia, Jarrett Golden of Maine, Ed Case of Hawaii, Jim Costa of California, Kurt Schrader of Oregon and Texans, Filimon Vieira, Henry Cuellar, and Vicente Gonzalez. Some of the more right-wing Texas Democrats there. And an interesting one, Ryan Grimm pointed this out, is Carolyn Bordeaux out in Georgia. She's in a kind of tough district, I believe the 6th or 7th district of Georgia, or also maybe the 4th. I'm not really sure. But what we do have here is this very interesting, because this is 3 different ads. So this, they call it the Unbreakable 9. This is No Labels is supporting these people. Gottheimer, Bordeaux, who, by the way, is the 7th district. But they're really taking heat and setting up a battle, not only with, as we talked about last time, not only with the progressive left, but the leadership, the Democratic House leadership. Gottheimer, Pelosi, really going for head-to-head here. And we talked about, on the last episode why that may not be the best idea for Gottheimer. But again, to keep this in mind when the left wing of the party is smeared as the people who don't want to do anything, they're there to disrupt, they're there to attack Democrats. Like, this is more. If AOC did this on something that actually mattered, like Medicare for all, like, people would be shocked and chagrined. But Gottheimer is not really getting any kind of play for this, of course. So Vela and Golden are planning to vote against the rule, and others in the group are considering it, although there's no cohesive strategy among the 9 on the rule vote. If there's full attendance, the Democrats will need 217 votes to adopt the rule and the budget. Unless there are absences or opponents who will vote present, Democrats can't lose more than 3 of their members, given the Republicans will be uniformly opposed to both bills. In a CNN interview on Monday, Gottheimer was optimistic about the situation despite the apparent impasse, saying, "I think we'll work this out. I'm ready to sit at the table, and so are my colleagues, ready to sit at the table and figure this out, and we can." Despite the prospect of not having enough votes to adopt the budget, Pelosi has not budged from her position. The California Democrat has said repeatedly the House won't vote on the infrastructure bill until the Senate passes a $3.5 trillion reconciliation bill. So starting off a little bit of kind of chicken game here, implementing the instructions laid out in the budget. So yeah, she's not going to pass the infrastructure bill until the budget goes through. And this $3.5 trillion reconciliation bill, that's going to set up a battle mostly between people like Kristen Sinema and Senator Bernie Sanders in the Democratic Senate caucus, which is really kind of where all the action is going to be at this point. A reconciliation bill, of course, only requires a simple majority rather than using the usual 60-vote cloture hurdle. Pelosi's letter on Monday in advance of the House rule vote said that passing the reconciliation bill was first necessary to preserve the House Democrats' historic leverage to get Biden's other policies unrelated to physical infrastructure enacted. She wrote that it was imperative to address the need of Democratic voters, especially women. Got to throw that lovely bit of useless identity politics in there in a transformative way. So a lot of stuff is, there's some interesting dynamics here because, of course, there could be a bit of a setup for failure. This could be something that, we're not expecting too much from because, someone like the Senate parliamentarian can come in and strike it down, and Biden and Pelosi will be able to throw up their hands and be like, oh, I tried, like they did on the minimum wage. But on the other hand, it's going to be interesting to see this fight here. And my guess is if Pelosi, most congressional observers say that if Pelosi says she has votes, the chances are she does have them and knows what she's talking about on this issue. But will Gottheimer defeat her? We'll find out. Only time will tell. We'll follow the story for you here on Newsflash. We're going to tell you about our vaccination drive and how it's being screwed by private consultants in just 20 seconds.
Buckingham Palace has announced the death of His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh.
It's Newsflash.
That's right, it's Newsflash, and today we're talking about the vaccination drive in California and abroad. In the Washington Post here. This is Isaac Stanley Becker. So he writes, when Gavin Newsom outsourced key components of California's vaccine rollout to the private sector during the pandemic's darkest days last winter, the Democratic governor promised the changes would benefit the most vulnerable. Wrong. You know, it's a private company. What are you talking about? The changes will benefit the people who are running it. The number one reason for handing the reins to Blue Shield of California, an Oakland-based health insurance company, was equity, he said, delivering vaccine. This is the liberal hell we're living in. California politicians represent it so perfectly, giving control of the vaccine rollout to Blue Cross Blue Shield because of equity and Black Lives Matter. I love it. It's great. It's perfect. It's so good. So the $15 million contract with Blue Shield plus $13 million from McKinsey did not deliver on that promise. What a shock, according to states and county officials as well as public health experts. So, it's like we are giving people like McKinsey who have proven that their literal physical purpose on this earth is to suck the life out of anything that does good for people and is cheap and easy and affordable. It doesn't give corporations a bunch of money. We're going to give them the power, and we're going to do it because they're going to care, and they're going to be focused on not just equality, but the better word, equity. Yes, that's it. Equity is a useful catchphrase, but the work was either non-existent or completely non-transparent, said Kim Rhodes, a health advocate and physician researcher at the University of California at San Francisco. About 45% of eligible black residents and Latino residents are fully vaccinated in California, compared to about 60% of the eligible white population. Equity! Yeah, guys, who is surprised Blue Cross Blue Shield of California and McKinsey didn't bring equity to California? California was not alone in using private contractors to manage vaccination in their state. At least 25 states, along with federal agencies in many cities and counties, hired consulting firms, according to Washington Post tally. The American vaccination drive came to rely on global behemoths such as McKinsey and Boston Consulting Group, with downsized state and local health departments and even federal health agencies relying on the private sector to make vaccines available to their citizens, according to hundreds of pages of contract documents, emails, and text messages obtained through public records requests. McKinsey's role extended beyond California to other states, including Ohio and New Jersey. Deloitte worked in 10 states. BCG received millions of dollars from the federal government to coordinate vaccine planning, while at least 11 states also worked with the company, in some cases paying to address gaps in federal planning. Depressing. Consultants say they help save lives by supporting overextended public servants and specialized expertise. But critics question whether the contracts improve government performance, arguing the arrangements are costly and difficult to oversee and oftentimes not effective. California has chosen to pay Blue Shield and other consultants millions of dollars to do the job the public health workforce is already doing, while on reduced salaries due to pandemic-related budget cuts. Again, this is a perfect example of the liberal hell that we're doing. Give Blue Cross Blue Shield $15 million. Give McKinsey, of all companies, $12 million to give the vaccine to people for equity purposes. They completely fail. And then, you know what? We will not pay our public health workers. Will we call them essential workers and key workers and heroes and clap for them all over the place? Yes. We'll be happy. We'll be happy to do that. But will we pay them a fair wage? No. Will we give them job security? No. That is what this is all about. It's all about pretending as much as you possibly can to do. As to look and appear good, while as doing as little good as possible. That's the game that most Democrats and liberals still very much play to this day. All right. So all the time we have for you today. Thank you so much for listening.